Hello everyone, in this latest movie, Jackie Chan plays a commander named Luo Feng. He receives a mission to lead his mercenary team to rescue the workers of an oil refinery that is under attack by a group of rebels. Among the people there is also Luo Feng's daughter. She is the head professor at the refinery and says that the rebel forces have besieged the place for 2 weeks. They attack every few days, aiming to force everyone to surrender and hand over ownership of the oil refinery to them. The total number of workers in there is 498, and they need to be evacuated immediately for safety. Now, this guy, I'm sure you're familiar with him, right? That's right. In today's movie, he plays a seasoned mercenary named Chris. He is playing golf alone in the desert to unwind when his younger brother comes to meet him. His brother brings the money from their previous job for Chris. Then he proposes Chris to join another mission, and this time the reward will be 5 times higher than usual. He says the target is an arms smuggler crossing borders and being escorted back to China by a Chinese mercenary team through a treacherous route called the Highway of Death, one of the world's most dangerous roads. Chris is not interested in this mission and declines, saying he's done enough and now just wants to live a normal life. Then he leaves in his car. He returns to a remote village in the desert, where he has been living for over 10 years and considers it his home. At this moment, a friend named Owen comes to check the water pipes there. Chris said that not far away, they had just built a dam, which caused the water supply to the village to be cut off. Without water, the place wouldn't survive. Owen suggested forming a team to solve the problem, but it would require a considerable amount of money. He asked for $100,000 to get started, but they wondered where they could get such a large sum. Later that evening, the village chief came and asked for Chris's opinion. He reassured her to leave everything to him. Meanwhile, at the refinery, Luo Feng and his team were discussing the relocation plan. Due to the large number of people, using helicopters was not feasible, and the surrounding roads were occupied by rebels. They decided to use multiple cars and traverse the Highway of Death to reach a safe area. The mention of the Highway of Death made others uneasy, not knowing what dangers awaited them. The next morning, the engineers completed the final procedures to shut down the refinery before leaving. The head professor handed a bag containing the USB data of the refinery to a young girl named May for safekeeping. Everyone then moved outside to board the vehicles and prepare to leave. However, at this moment, an unknown staff member was marking the car that carried the head professor with paint. The convoy of vehicles started to depart, and May, who is Luo Feng's daughter, was visibly upset, showing that the relationship between father and daughter in this family was not a happy one. May tells Luo Feng that in the past, he neglected their family due to work. Even when their mother was in the hospital, he didn't bother to visit her even once. Luo Feng sheds tears and explains that during that time, he was on a top-secret government mission. He believes the country needed him, but May argues that what about her and their mother? He served the nation so much, but what has he done for his wife and daughter? She declares that she will never be able to forgive him. Moving on, they notice a sandstorm approaching while they are on the move. Luo Feng's teammates find it puzzling as the weather indicated clear skies. As they drive into the sandstorm, the sand obscures their vision completely. Luo Feng senses that this sandstorm seems unusually strange. Suddenly, their communication signals are jammed, and their radios become useless. While the team is bewildered, several off-road vehicles with masked individuals approach them, looking very mysterious. They are pursuing the marked bus that Luo Feng's team is in and start shooting at it. One of them kicks open the window, overpowers the guards, and takes control of the situation. Another vehicle is also invaded, and the guards there try their best to resist. This girl gets kicked and thrown out of the vehicle but luckily lands safely. After escaping the sandstorm, Luo Feng gathers his team to assess the situation and realizes that they have lost 2 vehicles, numbered 8 and 11. After the strange incident where everyone's radios lost signal, it turns out that the masked group was Chris's team, along with his younger brother. Chris agreed to join this mission to earn $100,000 to repair the water pipes for the village. However, when he saw the people they captured, they didn't seem like arms smugglers, so he became suspicious of his brother. Back on Luo Feng's team, they managed to fix their communication devices and sent the helicopter back to search for the missing vehicles. After some time flying around, Luo Feng discovered that the enemy was using jet engines to create the sandstorm earlier. Another helicopter from his team spotted Chris's convoy moving with hostages. A fierce gunfight erupted, and Chris's subordinate, who reported the situation to Luo Feng, decided to attack the enemy. He stood on the helicopter and fired at the convoy of vehicles below. Then, he launched a grenade, successfully destroying one of Chris's team's vehicles. Their gunfire brought down one of the enemy's helicopters. When they returned to the base, Chris was furious with his brother for lying to him about the mission. Surprisingly, it was revealed that Owen was the mastermind behind all this. There were no arms smugglers at all. He only wanted to kidnap the head professor to take control of the oil refinery. His goal was to steal millions of tons of oil stored there for his own profit. Chris, upon learning the whole truth, became angry and refused to be part of such wrongdoing. Then Chris immediately left, ignoring Owen's promise of a huge sum of money if he joined the mission. After Chris departed, Owen didn't hesitate to shoot and kill Chris's younger brother. He then instructed his henchmen to stage the scene to make it look like a Chinese person seeking revenge. Luo Feng, who was sitting on the helicopter, noticed Chris running alone in the desert and became suspicious. He called his teammates, instructing them to regroup and move to a safe area while he and his daughter followed the suspicious individual. Following the trail, Luo Feng arrived at a village and saw Chris playing with some kids there. The encounter between the two was tense. One side asked about the person they were looking for, and the other claimed to know nothing. Fortunately, a kid intervened, preventing a potential fight. As Chris returned to the base outside the desert to collect his payment for the mission, he discovered his brother's lifeless body lying cold on the ground. Shocked and unsure of what had happened, he noticed someone lurking nearby. Luo Feng, who had been following Chris, drew his gun and advanced toward the base. Unexpectedly, Chris lunged forward to attack, and the two engaged in a fight right there. While Chris had superior strength, Luo Feng had the advantage of speed and agility. Luo Feng accused Chris of murdering his people. But Chris explained that he had no idea what happened and that they had taken the life of his brother. At that moment, a rebel stepped in to demand payment for the weapons they provided to Chris's brother. Somehow, both of them suddenly pulled the safety pin of a hand grenade to threaten the other group. The others saw this and left quietly. After that, the two quickly reinserted the safety pin because if it detonated, they would be in danger too. Then Luo Feng pointed his gun at Chris and interrogated him about who had kidnapped the Chinese people. Chris remained calm and said, "You shoot me, and you'll never find out." Then they decided to detonate the area to cover their tracks. Chris revealed that Owen was the one who kidnapped the head professor and the others. At that moment, Owen and his gang were inside the refinery, attempting to start the system. He forced the head professor to initiate the process, threatening the lives of the hostages. Initially, she resisted revealing anything, but when she saw the threat to her son's life, she spilled all the information, including that the USB containing the system's activation code was in May's bag. Later that night, Luo Feng and his daughter arrived at Chris's village to spend the night. Seeing Chris enthusiastically entertaining the orphans, Luo Feng realized that he couldn't be a bad person. During their conversation, Chris confided that he used to work for his father, but during a mission on the Death Highway, an unforeseen accident caused the death of his entire team. Since then, he had retreated to living in the village. While they were talking, they discovered that intruders were infiltrating the village. It turned out to be Owen's gang, trying to steal the USB from May. Chris quickly subdued one of Owen's men with a powerful punch. Luo Feng immediately launched an attack without hesitation. Both of them had to join forces to fight against the mercenaries and protect the villagers. The villagers came out in force, armed with guns and makeshift weapons, surrounding the intruders. Suddenly, one of the mercenaries pulled the safety pin of a hand grenade, demanding May's bag or they would detonate it. Chris reluctantly complied with their demands. May questioned him for doing so, but Chris explained that the village was like his family, and he couldn't risk their safety. May revealed that the bag contained a USB and a password to control the oil flow from the refinery. Chris quickly realized that the mercenaries were planning to steal the oil and would need hundreds of giant ships to transport it, potentially making it the largest oil heist in history. They immediately set off for the refinery to stop this plan. Before leaving, Luo Feng instructed his daughter to stay behind for safety. Then, both of them boarded a high-speed jet and started their journey. Upon arrival, the enemies opened fire recklessly. Chris relied on the armored vehicle to plow through obstacles and crash into the compound, bringing down a fire extinguishing tower before coming to a halt. They got out of the vehicle and engaged in a fierce battle with the mercenaries. Being in a highly flammable and explosive area, none of the enemies dared to use firearms. Chris used his strength to sweep away the foes before him, and Luo Feng fought fiercely alongside him. Easily, they subdued the untrained mercenaries in the area. As they entered inside, the two had to work together to subdue the bald-headed mercenary and free the hostages. However, it became apparent that this mercenary was of the highly trained professional type. His skills were far from ordinary, and despite their combined efforts, they couldn't overpower him. He dominated the situation entirely. Taking a gun, he fired at our main characters before they could react. Chris had to engage him in conversation to distract him, creating an opportunity for Luo Feng to launch a surprise attack from behind. After that, they split up, with Luo Feng dealing with the bald-headed mercenary while Chris pursued Owen. The enemies quickly left in a car, leaving Chris unsure of how to chase after them. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure from afar. May had taken Chris's truck and driven there. Thankfully, this provided them with a vehicle to chase after the enemy. Meanwhile, Luo Feng struggled to deal with the bald-headed mercenary. He was not easy to handle, being both strong and fast. Luo Feng had to use a fire extinguisher hose to subdue him, but the hose broke after a short burst of foam. Then, Luo Feng attached a coiled cable to the mercenary and engaged in a hand-to-hand fight that resembled an acrobatic performance in the sea of foam. In this chaotic situation, Luo Feng took advantage of the moment when the mercenary couldn't see clearly and delivered a fatal blow. He pulled the mercenary hard, making him lose consciousness and hang from a pipe above. Meanwhile, Chris and May were still struggling to catch up with Owen. Unfortunately, the old truck they were using made it difficult to keep pace with the enemy's off-road vehicle, and then Chris's vehicle performed a mid-air jump and rolled 3 times before hitting the ground, completely wrecked. Fortunately, everyone survived without serious injuries. Chris was speechless, only able to let out a loud scream to release the tension. Luckily, Luo Feng arrived on time with his jet-powered car, allowing them to continue pursuing the enemy. However, their vehicle was slower, and the enemy was about to escape the area. Chris decided to activate the jet engine, pushing the vehicle to its maximum speed towards the enemy. He rammed straight into an oil tanker, causing it to flip and explode. The other tankers behind also detonated. Although Owen was severely injured, he was still alive. He crawled out and pulled the driver from another vehicle, then continued to flee. Chris's vehicle got stuck in the mud, so they had to descend and activate the jet engine again to chase after Owen. He rammed straight into Owen's vehicle, but unable to stop, they crashed into the mountain wall. The car plunged into a deep ravine. Luckily, Luo Feng and his daughter managed to jump out in time. As they narrowly escaped death, May found Luo Feng's diary and a photo of her and her mother still kept in his bag. This discovery meant that her father had always cherished his family, so she decided to forgive him. The two hugged each other emotionally. Meanwhile, they noticed that Chris was clinging to the mountainside. They quickly pulled him up, and he was saved.